Hello and welcome to this audio and visual representation of Day 3 at the Darwin Festival. I was very lucky to get the opportunity to go to Shrewsbury School to take a look at their Darwin collection in the library. I also got to visit the Taylor Library, which is the original library from the original Shrewsbury School. Now, we weren't just left to our own devices and to roam around and get our sticky fingers on books from the 1500s. No, we had our expert guides, which were Dr. Robin Brooke-Smith and Naomi Nicholas, who you'll see and hear on this later on. I must add, before we go any further, that Shrewsbury School did give me permission to use my camera as long as I didn't obviously capture any children. It's a school, after all, we've got to protect the kids. And I must commend the two gents who stopped me on my way out. You see, they'd taken off our visitor badges before we left the site, before we could leave. So the two guys just saw me, an odd guy walking around with a Biscuit t-shirt and a camera in hand. They challenged me and asked me why I was walking around the school with a camera. After I explained who I was and what I was doing, they were fine. But well done, lads. You did the right thing that anybody should do if you see a strange guy in a Biscuit t-shirt walking around the school with a camera. Moving on. Our first stop for the tour was in the Moser Gallery, which is situated inside the library. Now, while we had these experts here with us during our time there, I didn't want to record everything I saw because, apart from being rude, it kind of spoils a little bit for anybody that may want to go on a tour in the future. The next voice you're about to hear is Dr. Robin Brooke-Smith, who is the Taylor librarian and the archivist at Shrewsbury School.
He was typical, wasn't paying attention. And there's a picture of a soldier, a wonderful picture of a soldier with his uniform. He's practicing his signature, he's practicing italic letters and upright letters. He's drawn stick men and so on and so forth. So he was an ordinary everyday schoolboy. And he came into the school right at the bottom and moved very, very slowly up the school, wasn't particularly distinguished. Didn't do particularly well, showed very little academic aptitude, and wasn't very interested in the mainly classical curriculum that the school had at the time. It was mainly classics, a bit of geography, and a lot of divinity, scripture, religious study. And they had the school chapel for 300 years. It was down in the old school in what's now the public library. The chapel was in fact St Mary's Church, and they had to go every day to chapel, and 3 times on a Sunday they had to go. He reckoned that they had to learn bits of Latin off by heart. He reckoned he'd have the book under the pew in the chapel. He reckoned he could learn it during the chapel service in time to be able to recite it.
The next voice you're going to hear is Naomi Nicholas, and I think she was absolutely fantastic in how animated she was. She'd really bring the audience in when she was explaining what a particular item was, whether it would be a letter or a book. She was really good at bringing people in. I thought she was fantastic.
Darwin was a great letter writer. There are many collections of his writings. Cambridge University has some, Down House have a lot, but I particularly like ours because I think they're very personal. And we have letters which he writes about scientific matters, but we've got quite a lot of personal letters here that he's writing to his best friend, his childhood friend. They were at university together, they were at Shrewsbury together, and he's called Charles Whitley. And so a lot of these letters are written to Charles Whitley, and they really give a sense of Darwin as a human being, being very self-aware of his own failings, and show him in quite a romantic-ish light over here. But the first one I really want to show you is this letter here, written in 1828. Darwin was 19 years old. He just had his 2 years at Edinburgh University, struggling through studying medicine, struggling through those, not attending his lectures, going off to learn taxidermy instead down the road. I've got a stuffed crocodile on display here. He didn't stuff it, but I thought it would add to the display there. So here he's writing, before he could get into Cambridge, he had to pass a mathematics exam, and it wasn't his thing. So his father sent him to a tutor, sort of a crammer, in the summer of 1828. And this letter here is written on Sunday evening in August 1828 to his dear friend Whitley. And he writes, "My dear Whitley, I am as idle can be. And one of the causes you have hit on is resolution. The other is being made fully aware that my noddle is not capacious enough to comprehend mathematics. Beetle hunting and such things, I grieve to say, is my proper sphere. He knew he didn't want to study maths, he knew he didn't want to be a doctor, he wanted to learn about the natural world. And if any of you have read his autobiography, there's a description there when he's beetle hunting in the woods and he finds there were some wonderful beetles and he runs out of hands and pops one in his mouth to keep it safe. So indeed, he really loved beetles and wasn't squeamish about them.
So right now in Shrewsbury School they have this amazing archive of letters, pictures, and even 2 original first editions of The Origin of Species, one of which is just behind me on the table there. This place is amazing. There's so many amazing things to look at. So I'm going to go and read some of the things and learn some learning. Now, as we're about to move on to the next part of the tour, I have to explain, I'm having a good look at things, but really, I'd like to sit in there for a good few hours and have a good nose at things, but obviously we can't do that, but it was really nice to see all these things. So now we're going to go into the ancient library, which Charles Darwin may have used. Books may have been used by him in that library, so... And of course, what I meant by ancient library, which it is an ancient library, but what I really mean is the Taylor Library we're about to enter right now.
We travelled back through time here, and the library is almost as old as the school. It was established in 1596 when the original school was completed, the construction of the original school was completed, which is now the public library, and the library was the upstairs floor on that wing that goes out sideways from the main, and you can still see the names carved on the wall if you go into that part of the library. Just as a little funny aside, incredibly, we have records of the school accounts going back to 1577, handwritten in Latin, beautifully written, and we have an account from a chap called Redman, who was a stonemason, who cut stone in Grinshill, and he carted it in for the construction of the original school, which is now the library. So he paid for the stone and the carting, and also timber from Harnage for the scaffolding. And it's just wonderful to have as a handwritten account of the original library. But these shelves, these piers here all the way around, go back to, is it the early 18th century?
Yes, about 1720.
1720. And they would have been in the library, and these would have been the shelves that Darwin would have perused books. What we've done today is to put out a dozen or so scientific books that would have been available to Darwin if he read scientific books. I'm not sure what he did, but to give you an idea of the sort of books that were on display then. The Taylor Library is called the Taylor Library because an old boy of the school who was a day boy, lived in the town, went to school when it was, in the original building, became a very successful classicist and became Professor of Classics at Cambridge and Fellow of St John's College, Cambridge. And he became, eventually, he was a great book lover and he collected books, all sorts of rare books and wonderful books, and he became the Cambridge University librarian for a time. And when he died, he bequeathed all his books to us, not to Cambridge, which we were rather pleased about. And the keeper of special collections there, William Hale, is in touch with me from time to time, and he's asked me to speak about the Taylor Library over there. 4 or 5 years ago, they were having an exhibition on Taylor, and he said, there's about 7 books on Taylor that I'd like information on. Can you tell me this, that, and the other? And can you give me some images of the title page and the book plates? And Taylor's got a particular book plate, which is sort of 2 stags and the coat of arms and all the rest of it. 6 of these 7 books had Taylor's book plate, and the 7th had Cambridge University Library. 1730 or 20 or something. So I said nothing, and he said nothing, and that was that. So we were, in due course, introduce you to the science book, but Naomi would like to talk a bit more about...
Yes, I'm sure you've all seen here that we have a small area of the original chained library left. This is how the books would have originally been stored, with their four edges outwards like this and titles inked on the spine. All of them would have had a little hook like this to keep them safe and absolutely chained and secure and safe, because books were rare, books were unusual. It wasn't until about the mid-1730s that the way of storing changed almost across the world as well, and we followed suit, and so books were turned round and displayed as you now see them. But it's lovely that we've got a little area like this left with the original. And of course, these are the original bookcases. We say that from the town library as well, so they came up with us here. So we've got mostly Bibles and Bible commentaries on this pier here. There's a lot of history and classics. A collection of science books were bequeathed to us by two Shrewsbury doctors, or on those two final piers over there. We have a fine collection of printed press books just facing you there. And do look on the way out that we've got a Kelmscott press display on either side in the two cases when you come in the door. We've got lots of books about Shrewsbury as well around the corner. And as Dr. Brooke-Smith said, we've put some of the scientific books out, and two atlases as well, which we hope, you never know, might have inspired Darwin in some way. So do go and look at that. And also the wonderful collection of fine bindings in the glazed cabinet over there in the corner.
Yes.
Thank you.
If we sort of move gradually through here, what we've over there, by the way, is two rather wonderful things. One on the left is what's called a herbarium, which is pressed flowers from the Oxford Botanical Gardens from 1670, I think.
Yes,
So those are pressed flowers from 300 years ago.
Some of them with their original colour as well.
We've got about 7 total volumes of herbarium, and they were used for medicinal purposes. And who knows, it was in here when Darwin was at school. He might have opened it and looked at those samples. And the other is a herbal, isn't it? A description of the medicinal uses of wildflowers and so on. Here we have an atlas by Ptolemy, Geographia. And it's a very interesting item, this, because it was originally produced by Ptolemy, who lived in the 1st century AD, and it was based on, a lot of it on the explorations of the Greek explorer Pytheas in about the 3rd century BC, and he produced this. Well, it wasn't an atlas, it was a series of maps. The atlas was invented in the sort of 15th, 16th century as a great idea with the arrival of printed books of sticking maps together and calling it an atlas, from Charles Atlas, who holds up the world. So you have a collection of maps together in one bound volume. And the original Ptolemy Geographia was lost for 1,000 years. It was completely not known, and was just refound or rediscovered in the 15th century in Italy, which was very much like what was happening in the Renaissance. Of old classical documents were being rediscovered, and classical learning, that the Renaissance was the sort of rebirth of classical learning. And here it is printed, and I'll leave it open at the United Kingdom, and you'll see, or the British Isles, and you'll see how accurate or not accurate it was. And I think the best thing is if you wander around, and I'll explain books as Britain. Yeah. If you get a slightly different perspective on it if you turn to France, and there's Albion Insulae Britannicae, part of the British Isles of Albion.
They've got the Isle of Wight, right, haven't they?
But you get the Pyrenees and the Alps just as sort of rough sketch, you know.
Yeah, fascinating.
But for BC, it's pretty good, really. And the whole world, if you want to look at the whole known world, there you have it.
Oh, gosh.
India has vanished, but Sri Lanka... Obviously, the ship's got that far, and Saudi.
Just to be in this room was really, really special. I got to walk around and be surrounded by all of this knowledge and this history, and also had these two experts here to speak to, and we did. We had some great conversations about some of the books and the history. So just to be in this environment, for me, as a person who isn't an academic, was really, really special. I spoke to a lady who told me about the smell of the books, the old smell. And I couldn't help but agree. I mean, when you go to a place like this and you smell the old books, or even if you're in an old church, or, I went to Venice and I got to go into the churches and the old buildings there, that musky old smell. It's probably about as immersive as history can get. And I can't help but feel in awe of being surrounded by this. And for the audio listeners that can't see what I'm trying to describe, there are literally shelves upon shelves of books that go from the floor right to the ceiling. Some of the more rare books are encased in glass cases, so you can still see them, but obviously they need to be protected. A guy came up to me and was like, it's weird to see radiators up by the ceiling. But of course, these books, they need to be kept up maybe a perfect humidity. Maybe, these books are protected so much that the temperature in the room is that important. There are busts on the bookcases. There are little mementos of some of the geniuses, some of the scholars that would have fingered through these books years and years ago. There's even, on one side, a death mask of Oliver Cromwell, which I found fascinating. I'd heard that death masks exist, but I'd never actually seen one in real life. This room is a treasure trove. For fans of history out there, the people that enjoy learning about history, just to be in that room was a real honour. While we see ourselves out of here, I want to say a huge thank you to Shrewsbury School for putting on this amazing tour, to our amazing guides, Dr. Robin Brooke-Smith and to Naomi Nicholas. You guys were fantastic, and there's always an open invitation for you guys to come sit with me on the Biscuit and just talk history. I would love to do that with you guys. I also want to say thank you for letting me do my Biscuit thing, take some pictures, videos and stuff. It was a real honour to be able to capture this place, because not everybody gets to come in and see the school. It's not a public place. You can't just walk in and start taking pictures. So it was a real privilege. So thank you very, very much. This has been a real pleasure to put together. And please, if you enjoyed this, make sure you give the Shrewsbury Biscuit a subscribe on YouTube, a follow on Podbean, get listening to some of the podcasts and give us some support. We love doing what we do, and we were back to do some more. Thank you very much. Peace out.